You wake before the sun has fully decided to rise. The room is cool, and the air feels still, as if the house itself is resting between one day and the next. Somewhere beyond the walls, the street is quiet. No rush of traffic, no sudden noise. Just the faint sense that other homes, other families, are waking in their own careful ways. You lie for a moment and listen. There might be a soft creak as the building settles, a distant train horn, far enough away to sound gentle, like a long breath. Maybe a dog shifts in a neighboring yard. The ordinary sounds of a town at rest, each one small and familiar. You pull the blanket closer, then let it fall back again, deciding that it's time to begin. When you sit up, the bed gives a low sigh of springs. You swing your feet down to the floor, feeling the cool boards. You move slowly, not because you must, but because the early morning invites it. Everything softened by dim light and quiet purpose. You dress in layers that feel practical. A sweater that has been worn and washed and worn again, holding warmth the way a good habit holds comfort. Socks that might not match perfectly, but they do their job. Clothes chosen not for show, but for readiness. Ready for a day that will be busy, and yet made of small, manageable pieces. You step into the hallway. The house is dim, the kind of dim that makes everything gentle. You know where the furniture stands, without needing to see it clearly. You know where the floor creaks, and you place your feet just beside those boards. You move like someone who has learned the house's quiet language. In the bathroom, the tap turns with a familiar resistance. The water runs cold at first, then slowly warms. You wash your face, and the simple shock of water clears away the remaining softness of sleep. You dry your hands carefully. Even small things feel worth doing well. When you brush your hair, the bristles catch and then glide. The routine is plain, but it steadies you. In times when so much of the world feels far away and uncertain, the rhythm of a morning can feel like an anchor, something you can hold without thinking too hard. You step back into the hallway and glance toward the window at the end. Outside, the sky is changing. Not bright, not yet. Just a slow shift from deep blue to a paler shade, like a curtain being drawn little by little. You can make out the shapes of houses, the bare lines of trees, the neat borders of fences. Everything looks the same as yesterday, and that sameness carries its own kind of reassurance. In the kitchen, the air is cooler than the bedroom. The room smells faintly of yesterday's supper, something mild and domestic, like potatoes or bread. On the counter, a few items rest in their usual places. A tin for sugar, perhaps, now more carefully guarded. A jar for saved drippings. A small bowl where odds and ends collect. You move with soft efficiency. You set a kettle on the stove. You take out a cup. If there is coffee, it may be stretched, mixed with something to make it last longer. If there isn't, there might be tea or a warm drink made from what you have. The point is not luxury. The point is warmth and a steady beginning. As the kettle heats, you stand with your hands resting on the back of a chair. You take a slow breath. You notice the quiet again. Then you hear it. Life beginning in small steps. A neighbor's door closing down the street. A bicycle wheel turning. A faint voice calling to someone, not loud, just practical. Somewhere, a baby fusses briefly, then quiets. The town is waking, but it does not feel rushed. It feels like a careful unfolding. You take a tin from the cupboard. Inside might be oats or flour or something saved for breakfast. You measure with attention. Measuring has become a kind of daily art. How to make enough, how to make it nourishing, how to keep a small reserve for tomorrow. You don't do it with panic. You do it with calm, acceptance, as if this is simply the way things are now. A world where you plan, where you save, where you stretch, and where you find comfort in the steadiness of your own hands. The kettle begins to murmur and then to hum. You pour hot water into your cup. The steam rises slowly. You hold your hands around the warm ceramic, letting the heat spread into your fingers. The warmth is simple, but it is real. It is the kind of thing you can count on. On the table, there may be a folded newspaper delivered early. Or perhaps it comes later, tossed gently onto the porch by a familiar route. When you do read it, you'll read it carefully, scanning headlines and notices, taking in information the way you take in weather, something that shapes your day, but not something you can fully control. For now, you keep the morning quiet. You look at the kitchen clock. Time feels both ordinary and newly important. Hours matter. Work shifts, school bells, store openings, ration days. But the early morning feels like it belongs to you before schedules take hold. If others are still sleeping in the house, you move lightly. You set out bowls or plates with soft taps instead of clatters. You keep your gestures smooth, thoughtful, as if the quiet is something you can protect. If the house is just you, the silence is not lonely. It is full of small presences, the ticking clock, the kettle cooling, the faint draft at the window. You might even enjoy this private pocket of the day, this little space that asks nothing but attention. You begin breakfast in a modest way. Maybe there's toast, bread sliced carefully so no crumb is wasted. Maybe there's a small bit of butter used sparingly. Maybe there's jam put up from last summer, a reminder of fruit and sunshine sealed into a jar. Maybe there's oatmeal stirred slowly until it becomes smooth and comforting. If eggs are available, they feel like a gift. If they're not, you don't dwell on it. You've learned to pivot gently, to accept substitutions the way you accept the changing seasons. While food warms, you glance at a small stack of papers kept in a safe place, a drawer you open only when needed. There might be letters, bills, and among them, ration books. They are not dramatic objects. They are plain and official, printed and bound, meant for ordinary hands. Yet they hold a quiet weight. They represent planning, limits, fairness in a complicated way, an attempt to share scarcity so no one is left without. You do not pull them out yet. It's still early. Today will bring its own set of errands and decisions. For now, you let the morning remain simple. You set breakfast on the table. You sit down. The chair is firm. The tabletop is worn in spots, polished by years of elbows and plates and daily life. You take a slow bite. You chew without hurry. You sip your warm drink. You let it settle. And as you eat, you think of the day in gentle pieces. There may be work, an office, a shop, a school, a factory line. There may be volunteering, rolling bandages, sorting donations, collecting scrap. There may be home tasks, laundry, mending, cooking with what you have, writing a letter in careful handwriting. None of it needs to be rushed in your mind. You simply line the day up like items on a shelf, one thing then the next. Each task has its place. You finish breakfast and begin to clear the table. You save what can be saved. You rinse the dish and set it to dry. Even this is soothing. Water running, a cloth wiping, the small shine of a clean plate. You look again toward the window. The sky is brighter now. Not bright like noon, but bright enough to see detail. The grain of the fence, the shape of a leaf left on the ground, the pale light touching the edge of the street. Soon, the household will fully wake. Soon, doors will open and close. Soon, the day will gather momentum. But for another moment, you allow yourself to move slowly. You straighten a chair. You fold a cloth. You check the stove. You breathe in the steady scent of morning. There is comfort in the predictability of these actions. They are yours. They belong to the home front, not as an abstract phrase, but as the literal front of your home. The kitchen, the hallway, the porch steps, the street beyond. And when you feel ready, you reach for the small, practical items that shape the day. Your list, your bag, and when it's time, the ration book waiting quietly in the drawer. You take one more slow look at the morning light. Then gently, you begin the next part of the day, moving toward the kitchen's careful decisions, measuring, planning, and making ordinary supplies last in calm, steady ways. And as you turn back to the counter, the quiet story of rationing begins to unfold. One soft choice at a time. You step closer to the kitchen drawer that holds the important papers. It's an ordinary drawer, worn smooth at the handle. It slides out with a soft rasp, like a whisper of wood against wood. Inside are familiar things: string, spare buttons, a pencil that's been sharpened down to a comfortable stub, and beneath them, neatly kept, the ration book. You lift it gently, as if it's delicate. The cover is plain, printed with official words and numbers, but it feels personal now. It belongs to your household, to your table, to the meals you will make and the small plans you will keep. You rest the booklet on the table and let your fingers hover over it for a moment. There's no dread in the gesture, just awareness. You've grown used to this new kind of arithmetic, the quiet counting that happens before you even step outside. You don't think of it as hardship in the moment. You think of it as a routine, as normal as checking the clock. You open the ration book. Inside are stamps or coupons, little squares of paper that stand in for sugar, coffee, meat, butter, and other goods. Each one is simple and official, yet it carries the weight of careful choices. You don't use them thoughtlessly. You use them the way you use a match, one at a time, with intention. You close the book again and place it beside your cup. The kettle is quieter now, the steam fading. Your drink, if it's coffee, might not be the rich, strong kind you remember. It may be a blend, stretched to last. If it's not coffee at all, it might be tea, or a warm substitute that smells faintly toasted, made to imitate what's scarce. Either way, you hold the cup and let the warmth settle you. On the counter, you keep a small collection of tins and jars. Each one has a purpose. A sugar tin that you open carefully, mindful of how quickly it empties. A flour canister you keep sealed tight. A glass jar with saved bacon drippings, golden and useful, waiting to be melted into a pan when butter is limited. Nothing is wasted in this kitchen, not because you are forced into sharpness, but because you've learned a calm respect for what you have. You move toward the pantry. The shelves are not overflowing, but they're tidy. Canned vegetables, a few boxed staples, dry beans in a cloth bag, perhaps a jar of preserves made when fruit was in season and there was time to stand at the stove, stirring and sealing and listening to lids pop into place. You take inventory the way you might check the weather, with steady attention, without drama. You can already picture supper quietly forming in your mind. You might make a stew that uses less meat and more vegetables, seasoned gently, simmered long enough to be comforting. You might stretch ground meat with breadcrumbs or oats, shaping it into patties that taste familiar enough. You might plan a meatless meal without calling it anything special. Just a pot of beans, or eggs if they're available, or a plate of vegetables from the cellar. The choices aren't loud, they're practical. You set a bowl on the table and measure oats or flour. Measuring has become part of the day's rhythm, like the ticking clock. You level the spoon carefully. You shake off excess with a light tap. You watch the ingredients fall in a soft stream, and it feels strangely soothing. This quiet precision, this sense that your hands can still create steadiness. If there are children in the home, you might be thinking ahead to their lunches. A sandwich made smaller, but still neatly wrapped. A piece of fruit if you have it. A simple cookie, if sugar allows, cut into modest portions. You might tuck in a note, a few kind words in pencil, nothing grand. Just a reminder of home folded into the day. You glance again at the ration book. Some items feel especially precious. Sugar, butter, coffee, meat. Even shoes, tires and gasoline, things beyond the kitchen, carry their own restrictions. The whole household seems to move with a gentler caution now, like walking along a path where every step matters. But even so, you don't let the kitchen become tense. You hum softly as you work, almost without noticing. You stir. You wipe the counter. You sweep crumbs into your hand and dispose of them carefully. And then there's the saving. You save kitchen fat in a jar because it can be used again. You save bones for broth. You save bread ends to dry and crumble into crumbs. You save string from packages. You rinse jars to use them again. You fold paper neatly, flattening it as if to say, this might still have a purpose. Saving is no longer a rare habit. It's a quiet language shared by many households. You see it in the way neighbors keep their own jars and tins, in the way people speak about making do with a small shrug and a steady smile. As you prepare the morning's food, you hear the house begin to wake more fully. A footstep overhead, a door opening, a soft voice, the small sounds of people entering the day. You don't rush them. You let them arrive gently, like the light arriving through the window. You set out what you've made. The table doesn't need to be abundant to feel welcoming. A warm bowl can be enough. A slice of toast can be enough. The comfort comes from the steadiness, the fact that even now you can begin the day with something warm and familiar. If someone sits with you, there may be small talk, not the heavy kind, just the light kind. Who has what to do today? What errands might be needed? Whether the weather looks like rain? Perhaps a mention of the newspaper or a line from the radio heard the night before. The war is present, of course, in the background of everything. It's in the rationing, the schedules, the letters. But in the kitchen, in the early morning, you keep your voice calm. You keep it human. You keep it gentle. After breakfast, you clear the table again. You scrape bowls clean. You save what can be saved. You set aside scraps that can be fed to a chicken if you keep one, or composted if you garden. You stack dishes carefully so they won't clatter. Then you move to a small list, maybe on a scrap of paper tucked near the stove, maybe in your head. Today you might need sugar, if you have enough coupons and it's available. You might need soap, which can be hard to find. You might need a bit of meat, or maybe you'll choose something else so you can save your points for later. You consider what's worth it. Sometimes the answer is simple. You buy what you can when you can. Sometimes you trade recipes with a neighbor, ideas for stretching flour, for baking without as much sugar, for making this savory meal feel complete. The sharing of knowledge becomes its own kind of nourishment. You wash your hands and dry them carefully. The kitchen looks orderly now, counter-wiped, dishes stacked, the ration book returned to its drawer. The room holds the quiet after a task well done. Like a pause between songs, you stand for a moment by the window and watch the street. A few people pass. Someone carries a small bag. Someone else wheels a bicycle slowly. There's a feeling of community in these small movements, as if the whole neighborhood is learning to live by the same gentle rules. And as the morning grows brighter, you feel the day drawing you outward. There are errands to run, stores with lines, clerks who know you by sight, shelves that may or may not hold what you need. You'll take your list, and when necessary, your coupons, and you'll bring home what you can, without fuss. You take one last look at the kitchen, the calm center of the household. You breathe in the faint scent of warm oats and clean dishwater. Then reach for your coat, your bag, and the small determination that comes from practice. And with that steady readiness, you step toward the door, prepared for the slow, patient rhythm of morning errands. Lines, coupons, and the soft companionship of familiar faces. You step outside and close the door gently behind you. The morning air feels crisp against your face. It carries the faint scent of coal smoke or damp earth, depending on the season. The street is awake now, but not hurried. A few cars pass slowly. A bicycle glides by with a soft whir of tires. Somewhere down the block, a screen door taps shut with a familiar rhythm. You adjust your coat and begin walking. If you live in town, the shops are not far. The sidewalks are worn smooth in places, edged by tidy lawns or narrow strips of grass. You pass houses that look much like your own. Curtains drawn back, porches swept, perhaps a small flag hanging quietly by the door. You nod to a neighbor. There's comfort in these simple acknowledgements. No one needs to say much. A small wave, a polite smile, a brief morning. You all know, in a quiet way, that you are navigating the same new routines. As you near the shops, you see a small cluster of people already gathered outside the grocers. No one looks impatient. They stand with hands folded or tucked into coat pockets. Some carry baskets. Others hold small paper lists. There's a murmur of conversation, low and steady, like wind moving through leaves. You take your place at the end of the line. The line itself feels almost ceremonial now. It's part of the rhythm of the week. You don't know exactly what will be available inside. Perhaps sugar has come in, or coffee, or a shipment of canned goods. The uncertainty no longer feels sharp. It simply feels expected. You glance at the shop window. There may be a sign posted, limited supply, or perhaps a handwritten note listing what has arrived that morning. The handwriting might be slightly crooked, done quickly before opening. You appreciate the effort. The door opens, and someone steps out with a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. They look satisfied, not triumphant, just content to have found what they needed. The door closes again with a soft chime of a bell. The line moves forward, one quiet step at a time. You listen to the conversations around you. Someone mentions a recipe that uses less sugar but still tastes good. Another talks about saving bacon fat for cooking. There might be a gentle complaint about how quickly certain items disappear from shelves. But even that complaint is mild, tempered by understanding. There is a sense of shared patience here. You're not alone in the careful counting of coupons. You're not alone in adjusting meals or stretching ingredients. Everyone in line is part of the same slow choreography. Moving forward, stopping, waiting, moving again. When you reach the door, you hold it open for the person behind you. Inside, the shop smells of wood, flour, and soap. The shelves are neat, though not as full as they once might have been. Gaps appear here and there, spaces where something would normally sit. But the emptiness isn't chaotic, it's orderly, acknowledged. The shopkeeper greets you by name, or at least with familiarity. You exchange a few words about the weather, perhaps about how early the delivery arrived today. There's comfort in the ordinary politeness of it all. Business continues, just in a slightly different shape. You hand over your list. As the items are gathered, carefully, thoughtfully, you open your bag and take out your ration book. You flip to the correct page, scanning for the right stamps. Your fingers move slowly, making sure not to tear more than you should. Each stamp is removed with intention. The shopkeeper takes them and places them aside without ceremony. It's just part of the exchange now. Money, coupons, a nod. If something on your list is unavailable, you adjust. Perhaps there is no sugar today. You make a small note in your mind to try again next week. Perhaps there's less meat than you hoped, so you choose a smaller cut, already imagining how you might stretch it into a stew with potatoes and carrots. You don't linger in disappointment. Instead, you let creativity fill the gap. A different recipe, a smaller portion, a new way of seasoning. Over time, these adjustments become second nature. Your parcel is wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. You tuck it carefully into your bag or basket. You thank the shopkeeper. They thank you in return. The bell over the door rings softly as you step back onto the sidewalk. Outside, the line is still there, a little shorter now. You feel a small sense of accomplishment. Not dramatic, just steady. You've secured what you could. You've used your coupons wisely. You've participated in the quiet system that keeps everything moving. If you have other errands, you continue down the street. Perhaps you stop at the butcher, where cuts of meat are displayed more sparingly, or the bakery, where bread is sliced thinner than it used to be, or the post office, where letters are sorted with careful hands and news travels in envelopes rather than headlines. At the post office, the air might smell faintly of ink and paper. You stand in another small line. You buy a stamp. Maybe you send a letter, just a page or two, written in careful script the night before. Nothing too heavy, just daily life described in gentle detail. The garden beginning to sprout, the new neighbor's cat, the way the weather has shifted. You drop the envelope into the slot and listen to it fall. It's a small sound, but it carries meaning. A connection sent outward, a thread tying you to someone far away. When your errands are done, you begin the walk home. The bag in your hand has a comfortable weight, not heavy, not abundant, just enough. The sun has risen higher now, casting clearer light on the street. You notice small details you might have missed earlier. A chalk drawing on the sidewalk, a bicycle leaning against a fence, curtains fluttering in a breeze. As you walk, you feel part of a larger pattern. All around you, other households are doing the same, measuring, waiting, adapting. There is no loud celebration in these routines, no grand speeches, just steady participation in something shared. You reach your front door and pause for a moment. Inside, there will be more to do. Food to store carefully, perhaps work to attend, perhaps children to guide, perhaps laundry to hang or a garden to tend. But for now, you step back into the familiar quiet of your home. You place the parcels on the kitchen table and untie the string. You smooth the paper and fold it for later use. You set each item in its place. Sugar in the tin, flour in the canister, meat in the cool box or ice box, wrapped tightly. You take a slow breath. The morning errands are complete. The coupons are fewer, but the shelves are a little fuller. The day is moving forward, not in leaps, but in small, dependable steps. You wash your hands again, letting the cool water run over your fingers. And as you dry them on a clean towel, you begin to think about the next part of the morning, the rhythms of school and home lessons, where children learn not just arithmetic and spelling, but also saving, sharing, and contributing in their own quiet ways. And with the groceries put away and the house settled once more, your thoughts turn gently toward the younger voices of the day and the steady lessons shaping their world. As the morning continues, the house fills with softer movement. If there are children in your home, you hear the rustle of clothing, the quiet thud of dresser drawers closing, the gentle murmur of sleepy voices growing clearer. The day gathers shape not in a rush, but in layers. You stand in the hallway for a moment and listen. A yawn, a laugh, the shuffle of shoes being pulled on. These sounds feel grounding. No matter how much the world shifts beyond your street, the small rituals of getting ready for school remain surprisingly steady. You step into the kitchen again and lay out what you've prepared. Lunches are modest but thoughtful. A sandwich wrapped in wax paper, folded neatly at the corners. A piece of fruit, if you have it. Perhaps a small treat, saved carefully from your ration allowance. A cookie made with less sugar than before, but shaped with care. You close each lunch pail or paper bag gently, as if sealing in reassurance. At the table, there's a quiet hum of activity. Buttons are fastened, hair is combed, a collar is straightened. You remind them softly to take their books, to remember their mittens, to come straight home after school. You don't lecture, you don't raise your voice. The lessons of this time are woven into daily life so naturally that they rarely need to be announced. As coats are pulled on and scarves tied, you notice how much children absorb without complaint. They know about rationing. They understand, in their own way, why certain things are scarce. They've heard words like scrap drive and war bonds and victory garden often enough that they've become part of ordinary vocabulary. You open the door and let them step out into the morning. Backpacks or book satchels hang at their sides. Their footsteps fade down the sidewalk, joining the rhythm of other children making their way toward the schoolhouse. When you close the door, the house grows quiet again. But it's a different kind of quiet now. A daytime quiet, purposeful. At school, the day unfolds with its usual structure. You can almost picture it. Desks in neat rows, chalk dust settling lightly on a wooden ledge, sunlight filtering through tall windows, the teacher's voice steady and calm as lessons begin. Arithmetic problems are written on the board. Spelling words are recited carefully. Geography maps are unrolled and pointed to with a long stick. But alongside these familiar subjects, new lessons have found their place. Children are reminded to save scraps of metal, paper, and rubber. They are told why these materials matter. The explanations are simple, gentle, not frightening, just clear. Every little bit helps. Perhaps a poster hangs on the wall, encouraging thrift and resourcefulness. Perhaps there's a collection bin near the door, already holding bits of foil, old keys, worn-out tools. The act of dropping something into the bin feels small, but meaningful. You can imagine the quiet pride when a child brings in a bundle of old newspapers tied neatly with string. At home, you might keep a similar stack by the door, ready for the next collection day. Newspapers flattened, magazines saved, even cooking fat poured carefully into a tin to be handed over when the time comes. Saving becomes a shared language between generations. In classrooms, children may knit small squares or roll bandages, their hands moving carefully under supervision. The motions are simple, repetitive, almost soothing. Yarn sliding between fingers, fabric folding in tidy layers. They don't see it as sacrifice. It feels more like participation. On certain days, there might be assemblies. Nothing loud or dramatic, just the gathering of students in a hall, listening as a teacher or principal speaks about helping, about responsibility, about community. The tone remains steady, encouraging, not overwhelming. Back at home, your morning continues with tasks of its own. Perhaps you clear the breakfast, dishes fully now, scrubbing them with soap used sparingly. You rinse them and set them to dry, noticing how sunlight catches on the edges of plates. Maybe you turn to laundry, a basin filled with warm water, soap rubbed carefully into fabric, sleeves rolled up. The rhythmic motion of scrubbing feels grounding, almost meditative. You rinse each garment thoroughly, wring it out with steady hands, and hang it outside if the weather allows. On the line, shirts and dresses sway gently in the breeze. The sight is peaceful. Clean fabric against open sky. If you glance toward a neighboring yard, you might see similar lines, similar quiet industry. You share this routine without needing to speak about it. Later, when the children return from school, they may bring stories, not of fear, but of effort. Perhaps they tell you how their class collected more scrap than the one down the hall, or how they planted seeds in small pots near the window, or how they learned a new song, soft and patriotic, but sung in gentle voices. You listen attentively, you nod, you ask small questions, you let them describe the details that matter to them. Who carried the heaviest stack of papers, who forgot their lunch, who got chalk on their sleeve. You notice how quickly children adapt. They trade comic books more often than candy. They patch their clothes without fuss. They speak casually about saving and sharing, as if these habits have always existed. And in a way they have. The idea of contributing, of being part of something larger, settles naturally into young routines. It feels like belonging. In the afternoon, homework may spread across the kitchen table. Pencils scratch against paper. You help with arithmetic, explaining a problem step by step. You listen to spelling words recited carefully. You check handwriting, encouraging neatness, but not perfection. Outside, the world continues its steady pace. A truck rumbles past. A door closes. A dog barks once and then quiets. The day moves forward without urgency. When the lessons are done, there might be chores. Children gather eggs from a backyard coop, if you keep hens. They pull a few weeds from the garden. They sort through a small pile of saved scrap, tying it neatly with string. Each task is modest. Each one reinforces the same calm message. What you do matters, even if it feels small. As the afternoon light begins to soften, you glance at the clock. Soon, other rhythms will take over. Work shifts ending. Factory whistles blowing in the distance. Neighbors returning home with lunch pails in hand. The school day fades into evening, but its lessons linger quietly. Saving, sharing, paying attention, doing your part. You gather the homework papers into a neat stack. You clear the table again, preparing it for supper later. You look around the room and see the small evidence of effort. Folded laundry, a basket of sorted scrap, a row of shoes placed neatly by the door. There's no applause for these things, just a steady sense of contribution. And as the house grows calm in the late afternoon light, you begin to think about the broader world of work beyond these walls, the offices, shops, and workshops where adults move through their own carefully structured days. And with the children's lessons tucked neatly away, your thoughts drift toward the steady rhythm of the working day, where time is measured in shifts, tasks, and quiet determination. As the afternoon settles into its steady pace, you imagine the many workplaces quietly humming beyond your street. If you work outside the home, your day may already be well underway. You picture yourself stepping through a doorway earlier that morning, perhaps into a small office with wooden desks lined in careful rows, or into a neighborhood shop with glass counters and neatly arranged goods, or into a post office where mailbags sit waiting to be sorted. The air in these places carries its own scent. Paper and ink, polished wood, machine oil, fresh bread. Each workplace has a personality, but all share a new rhythm shaped by the times. You hang your coat on a hook and smooth your sleeves. The clock on the wall ticks steadily, marking time with quiet authority. Time feels different now. It feels more deliberate. Schedules matter. Deliveries are planned with precision. Shifts begin and end with purpose. You sit at a desk, if your work is clerical. A typewriter rests before you, solid and dependable. When you press the keys, they respond with a soft clack, letters striking ribbon and paper in tidy lines. The sound becomes a kind of background music, steady, repetitive, almost soothing. You file documents carefully, aligning edges, labeling folders. Paperwork might involve supply orders, transportation schedules, payroll records. Nothing dramatic. Just the careful organization that keeps larger systems moving. If you work in a shop, you straighten shelves and greet customers with a measured smile. The bell above the door rings gently each time someone enters. You listen to requests, some specific, some hopeful. You check inventory, aware of what's limited. You offer alternatives when needed, explaining softly that certain items may arrive next week, or perhaps the week after. There's no impatience in your voice. You've grown accustomed to helping people adjust. You suggest substitutions. You share small bits of information. What's coming in, what's already gone. Conversations are practical, kind, and often brief. If your work is at the post office, you sort letters into slots with steady hands. Names and addresses pass before you in an endless stream. You recognize familiar handwriting from regular senders. You stamp envelopes with firm, practiced movements. The rhythm of sorting becomes almost meditative. Lift, glance, place. Lift, glance, place. You know that each envelope carries something important. News from afar, updates from relatives, notes of reassurance. You handle them with quiet respect. Across town, in offices connected to transportation or local government, others sit at drafting tables or telephones. They answer calls with calm voices. They jot down notes. They calculate figures. They consult charts and ledgers. The work is steady, not glamorous, but deeply necessary. Lunch breaks come without fanfare. You open a lunch pail or unwrap a paper bundle at your desk or in a small break room. Inside is something simple, a sandwich, perhaps thinner than in years past, a piece of fruit, a thermos with tea or coffee substitute. You eat slowly. Around you, co-workers do the same. There may be light conversation, comments about the weather, about a neighbor's garden, about a recipe that uses less sugar but still tastes satisfying. Sometimes someone mentions a headline from the morning paper. The discussion remains measured. No raised voices, just shared information, absorbed quietly before returning to work. You finish your meal and fold the paper carefully, tucking it away for reuse if possible. Back at your station, the afternoon stretches ahead in manageable segments. You focus on one task at a time. Stamping forms, writing receipts, counting change, balancing a ledger, answering questions. Each action is small, but together they form a steady chain of productivity. You notice how routines have shifted subtly since the war began. Some co-workers may have left, replaced by new faces. There may be more women in positions that were once filled almost entirely by men. There may be younger workers stepping into responsibilities sooner than expected. The adjustments feel gradual now, part of the landscape rather than a sudden change. You offer guidance when needed. You explain a filing system or show someone how to operate a machine. There's patience in these exchanges. Everyone is learning. Everyone is adapting. Outside the window, the light changes almost without you noticing. Shadows lengthen slightly. The afternoon sun tilts lower in the sky. Inside, the steady hum of work continues. Typewriters tapping, drawers opening and closing, pens scratching across paper. The clock ticks on. When a shift ends, there is no dramatic release. Just a quiet winding down. You stack papers neatly. You cover the typewriter. You sweep a small area behind the counter. You wash your hands in cool water, drying them on a shared towel. Coats are retrieved from hooks. Hats are settled into place. Lunch pails are picked up again, lighter now. You exchange brief goodbyes. See you tomorrow. Have a good evening. Take care. There's warmth in these simple phrases. They hold more meaning now. An acknowledgement of shared effort, of days spent contributing in steady ways. As you step outside, the air feels different from the morning. Warmer, perhaps, or tinged with the scent of evening cooking drifting from nearby homes. The street is more active now. Children play with a worn ball or chalk drawings. A truck rolls slowly past. A neighbor sweeps their porch in long, even strokes. You begin the walk home. If you pass a factory on the way, you might hear a distant whistle marking the end of a shift. The sound carries across rooftops, not harsh, but clear. It signals transition, work giving way to evening. You feel a quiet satisfaction, not pride in a loud sense, just the steady comfort of having completed your tasks. You've filled in forms, you've sorted letters, you've balanced accounts, you've helped customers, you've done your part for the day. When you reach your door, you pause for a brief second before entering. Inside, the house waits. Kitchen table cleared. Afternoon light slanting across the floor. There will be supper to prepare, perhaps laundry to fold, maybe letters to read. The day is not over yet, but it has shifted into a softer phase. You set down your bag or lunch pail. You remove your coat. You wash your hands, watching the faint grey of the day's work swirl down the drain. The house greets you with familiar quiet. And as you step fully back into its calm embrace, you begin to sense another rhythm, pulsing just beyond the neighborhood. The deeper mechanical hum of factories where production continues with steady determination. And with your own workday gently concluded, your thoughts drift toward those long rows of machines and the patient hands guiding them, shaping the steady heartbeat of factory hours. As late afternoon settles into early evening, you imagine another kind of workplace across town. The factory stands larger than the small offices and shops. Its walls are brick, solid and practical. Tall windows line the upper floors, catching the last of the daylight. A smokestack rises above the roof, not in menace, but in quiet industry. If you work there, your day began early. You remember arriving while the sky was still pale, joining a line of others at the entrance. Lunch pails in hand, coats buttoned, shoes sturdy and worn in just the right places. There was no rush at the door, just a steady flow inward. Inside, the air carried the scent of metal and oil. Not unpleasant, just distinct. Machines rested in long rows, silent at first, like a field waiting for wind. Work tables were arranged neatly, tools hung in ordered lines, each one with its place. When the shift whistle blew, it wasn't jarring. It was clear and firm, signaling the start of movement. You tied back your hair or rolled up your sleeves. You adjusted gloves if needed. You stepped into position beside your station, familiar with its surface, its edges, its small quirks. The machines began to hum, not a chaotic roar, but a layered rhythm. Belts turning, gears catching, metal meeting metal in steady intervals. The sound quickly blended into a background pulse, constant, almost hypnotic. You focused on your task. Perhaps you assembled small components, fitting one piece carefully into another. Perhaps you inspected finished items for flaws, running your fingers lightly along edges to ensure smoothness. Perhaps you operated a press, lowering it with measured control, watching as raw material became something useful. The work required attention, but it also invited repetition. Lift, align, secure, check. Lift, align, secure, check. There was comfort in that sequence. Around you, others moved with similar focus. Some had worked in factories before. Others were newer to it. Women who had once worked only at home or in shops, now standing confidently at machines. Older workers guiding younger ones with calm instruction. Conversations happened in small pockets, spoken loudly enough to be heard over the hum, but never frantic. Someone might comment on the weather. Someone else might mention a child's school project. There were shared smiles, quiet encouragement, a sense of teamwork that felt grounded and steady. On the walls, there might be posters reminding everyone of the importance of their work. The tone of these reminders wasn't sharp or dramatic. It was steady and affirming. A message that what you were building mattered. That each rivet, each bolt, each carefully assembled part contributed to something larger. You didn't dwell on the larger picture constantly. Instead, you focused on what was directly in front of you. The texture of metal beneath your fingertips, the precise alignment of parts, the subtle vibration of machinery beneath your boots. When it was time for a break, the whistle sounded again. You stepped away from your station and found a place to sit. Perhaps on a wooden bench along the wall, perhaps at a long table shared with others. You opened your lunch pail and unwrapped your sandwich slowly. There was a feeling of shared pause in the room. Machines quieted. The hum softened. The air seemed to expand. You took a sip from your thermos, coffee substitute or tea, warm and grounding. You noticed how tired your hands felt, but not in a discouraging way. It was the kind of tiredness that comes from doing something tangible, something measurable. You might compare lunches lightly. Someone brought boiled potatoes, another had a slice of pie saved from Sunday. There was no envy, just small appreciation. After the break, the whistle called you back. You returned to your station with a renewed steadiness. The repetition resumed. Lift, align, secure, check. Time moved differently inside the factory. Hours were marked by tasks completed, by bins slowly filling with finished pieces, by the gradual shift of light through the high windows, from bright morning beams to softer afternoon glow. You may have glanced up occasionally to stretch your neck, watching dust motes drift in shafts of light. In those brief moments, the factory felt almost peaceful despite its scale. As the end of the shift approached, the work didn't speed up. It maintained its careful pace. There was pride in finishing properly, in leaving your station orderly, in wiping down surfaces and placing tools back in their assigned hooks. When the final whistle blew, it carried a note of completion. The machines powered down one by one, their hum fading into silence. The sudden quiet felt thick at first, almost unfamiliar. Then it settled into something restful. You removed your gloves. You washed your hands in a long row of sinks, watching the water carry away the faint residue of the day, the scent of soap mixed with lingering oil. Coats were gathered. Lunch pails were closed. Goodbyes were exchanged in low, friendly tones. Outside, the sky had shifted toward evening. You stepped into the cooling air, breathing deeply. The factory behind you stood solid and calm, windows reflecting the soft light of dusk. As you walked home, you felt the weight of the day in your shoulders, but also a quiet sense of contribution. The work had been steady, necessary, repetitive in a way that soothed rather than unsettled. You had taken raw material and helped shape it into something precise. Back in your neighborhood, familiar sights greeted you. A child skipping along the sidewalk, a neighbor watering a small garden, the faint clatter of dishes being set for supper. You reached your front door and paused. Inside, the kitchen would soon fill with the scent of cooking. Perhaps vegetables simmering gently, perhaps bread warming in the oven. The house would feel smaller than the factory, but warmer. You stepped inside and set your lunch pail on the counter. You washed your hands once more, slower this time. You looked around at the tidy room, the ration book resting quietly in its drawer, the groceries placed carefully on their shelves. The world beyond your home might feel vast and complicated, but here, in the steady light of early evening, everything felt contained and manageable. And as you began to think about supper, your thoughts drifted naturally to another quiet act of contribution, one that happened not in brick buildings filled with machines, but in backyards and vacant lots, where soil was turned patiently by hand, and with the hum of factory hours fading into memory, you turn your attention toward the gentle rustle of leaves and the patient tending of a victory garden. In the soft light of early evening, you step into the backyard. The air feels different here than it did inside the factory or the kitchen. It carries the scent of soil and grass, of leaves warmed gently by the day's sun. The sounds are quieter too. No hum of machines, no ticking clock. Just the faint rustle of plants and the occasional chirp of birds settling in for the night. Your garden waits. It may not be large. Perhaps it fills only a corner of the yard. Perhaps it stretches in tidy rows where lawn once grew. In cities, it might even be a shared plot in a vacant lot, or a series of boxes on a rooftop catching as much sunlight as possible. But no matter the size, it feels important. You walk slowly between the rows. Tomato plants reach upward, their leaves slightly curled at the edges. Beans climb thin wooden stakes. Carrots hide quietly beneath the soil. Lettuce spreads low and green, catching the fading light. You crouch down and press your fingers into the earth. The soil feels cool now, holding the memory of the day's warmth. You loosen it gently around the base of a plant, careful not to disturb the roots. A small weed comes free in your hand with almost no resistance. You place it in a basket, knowing it will return to the soil later as compost. Tending the garden has become part of your routine. Not hurried, not dramatic, just steady. In the beginning, perhaps you weren't entirely sure what would grow well. You may have studied seed packets carefully, reading instructions in small print. You may have listened to advice from neighbors, when to plant, how deep to dig, how much to water. Now, the motions feel familiar. You carry a watering can from the spigot, careful not to spill too much. The water pours in a gentle arc, darkening the soil around each plant. You move methodically, row by row, giving each one attention. As you work, you feel a sense of quiet independence. The garden does not replace the grocery store entirely. It does not eliminate rationing, but it softens it. It adds fresh color and flavor to your table. It offers reassurance that you can coax something nourishing from the ground with your own hands. If children are nearby, they might kneel beside you. They ask questions about which plants are ready to pick. They search for small green tomatoes hidden under leaves. They pull a carrot too soon and hold it up proudly, soil clinging to its roots. You smile and brush the dirt away gently. The lessons here are simple and tangible. Seeds become plants. Plants become food. Effort becomes sustenance. Sometimes neighbors lean over the fence to talk. You compare notes on how your cucumbers are faring. You trade a handful of beans for a few extra tomatoes. The exchanges are modest, friendly. There's a sense of shared purpose in these conversations. You glance down the block and see other gardens in various stages of growth. Some are tidy and symmetrical. Others are slightly wild, rows bending where space allowed. All of them represent the same quiet intention: to contribute, to conserve, to provide. You move toward a small basket resting near the edge of the plot. It holds what you've harvested so far, perhaps a few tomatoes warmed by the sun, a bundle of carrots, a handful of leafy greens. The colors look vibrant against the woven wicker. You carry the basket back toward the house. Inside the kitchen, you set the vegetables on the counter and rinse them carefully. Water beads on their surfaces, washing away the last traces of soil. You trim stems and set aside scraps for compost, returning nutrients to the earth in a steady cycle. Dinner begins to take shape around these fresh additions. A stew becomes brighter with garden carrots. A salad gains crisp lettuce and sliced tomatoes. Even a simple sandwich feels more abundant with something grown just steps from your door. As the meal simmers gently on the stove, you step back outside for a final look. The sky has shifted into deeper shades now, soft blues fading toward purple. The garden appears calmer in this light. Leaves darkened, edges softened. You stand quietly, hands resting at your sides. There is something deeply reassuring about tending plants during uncertain times. The garden does not rush. It does not react to headlines. It follows its own slow rhythm: sun, rain, growth, harvest. You feel connected to that rhythm. You notice small details: the faint scent of tomato leaves, the way a bean vine wraps itself patiently around its support, the subtle hum of insects moving through the air. This is work too, but it feels different from factory hours or office tasks. It is slower, earthier, more forgiving. You bend once more to press a bit of soil around a plant that leans slightly. You straighten it carefully, patting the earth into place. There, that feels better. When you return inside, the house greets you with warmth. The stove clicks softly. A pot lid rattles gently as steam escapes. The table waits to be set. You place the basket near the sink and wipe your hands on a clean cloth. The garden has given what it can for today. Tomorrow, you will return to it again, perhaps to weed a little more, to harvest another vegetable, to check on seedlings just beginning to sprout. For now, the task is complete. And as you begin to think about the evening ahead, about mending clothes worn thin by work and play, you feel the quiet satisfaction of soil under your fingernails and the steady knowledge that even small patches of earth can make a difference. And with the garden resting under the deepening sky, your attention shifts indoors once more, toward needles and thread, and the careful art of making do. After supper begins to simmer and the last of the daylight softens at the windows, you settle into a quieter task. On the table, or in a small basket near your chair, rests a modest sewing kit. Inside are spools of thread in practical colors: white, brown, navy, grey. A few needles tucked into a small cushion, buttons saved from garments long since outgrown, snippets of fabric folded carefully, too useful to discard. You lift a shirt from the back of a chair. At the elbow, the fabric has thinned, not torn entirely, but worn enough to show the pale hint of strain. You run your fingers over the spot, feeling its softness. It tells a quiet story of movement and use, of arms bent at desks, of hands reaching, of days lived fully. You thread a needle. The motion is practiced. The thread passes through the eye with a steady hand. You knot the end without thinking, fingers moving in small, efficient gestures. You begin to sew. In and out, in and out. The needle glides through fabric, pulling the thread behind it in a neat line. The rhythm is gentle, almost like breathing. You don't rush. There's no reason to. Mending has become more than a practical necessity. It's a quiet expression of care. Clothes are not replaced easily now. New fabric can be scarce. Ready-made garments may cost more coupons than you're willing to spend, so you turn to what you already have. You reinforce seams before they split. You patch knees with sturdy cloth cut from older garments. You turn collars to hide wear. You shorten hems to fit a growing child, and then let them down again when fabric allows. Each stitch extends the life of something familiar. As you work, the house hums softly around you. Perhaps someone reads at the table, turning pages slowly. Perhaps the radio sits silent for now, waiting for the evening broadcast. The clock marks time with its steady ticking, unbothered by headlines or shortages. You hold up the mended sleeve to inspect your work. The patch is visible but tidy. It doesn't try to hide itself completely. It simply does its job. There is no shame in repair. In fact, there's a quiet pride in it, a sense of resourcefulness that feels grounded and steady. You set the shirt aside and reach for a sock. The heel has worn thin, nearly translucent. You slip a small darning egg or even a smooth stone inside to give it shape. Then you begin again, stitching in a careful web, reinforcing the weak spot with patient attention. The repetitive motion feels soothing. Outside, the sky darkens further. The first stars may begin to appear, faint but steady. Inside, the light from a lamp casts a warm circle over your hands and the fabric beneath them. You think about how many households are doing the same thing at this hour. Needles moving quietly, buttons being replaced, zippers adjusted, hems straightened. Across neighborhoods and towns, small acts of preservation are taking place without fanfare. You reach into your basket and find a jar filled with saved buttons. They don't match perfectly. Some are larger, some smaller. A few are slightly chipped, but each one has potential. When a coat loses a button, you select the closest match and sew it on securely, reinforcing it with extra stitches so it will last. You smooth the coat afterward, satisfied. Even flour sacks may find new life here. Printed with simple patterns or plain white, they can be washed, cut, and sewn into aprons or children's clothes. You run your hand over the fabric, imagining what it might become. A simple dress perhaps, with a carefully stitched hem and a row of sturdy buttons down the front. There is creativity in making do. You fold a finished garment neatly and place it on a small stack. Each repaired piece feels like a small victory, not dramatic, but meaningful. You glance toward the window. Curtains hang ready for later when blackout time approaches. You'll draw them carefully, ensuring no light escapes into the night. But for now, you let the lamplight glow softly against the glass. You pick up one last item, a child's sweater with a loose cuff. The yarn has unraveled slightly, threads peeking out at the edge. You take a crochet hook or knitting needle and gently work the yarn back into place, securing it with tiny, almost invisible stitches. The sweater will last another season now. When you finally set the needle down, you flex your fingers gently. They feel pleasantly tired, not strained. The basket is lighter. The stack of mended clothes is taller. You blow out a quiet breath. The act of mending has a calming effect. It reminds you that not everything must be replaced, that care can restore strength, that attention can extend usefulness. You tidy the sewing kit, returning spools to their places, tucking needles safely into their cushion. You close the lid and slide the basket aside. The house feels peaceful in this moment. Supper dishes may still need washing. The radio will soon come alive with familiar voices. Letters may wait to be written. But for now, there is a pause. You rest your hands in your lap and listen to the quiet. Somewhere down the street, a screen door closes softly. A neighbor's light flickers on. The day has not been grand or loud. It has been made of small, steady tasks, errands, work, gardening, mending. And as evening settles more fully over the block, you sense the gentle presence of neighbors just beyond your walls, families gathering at their own tables, voices low and warm. And with needle and thread set aside for the night, your attention drifts outward to the quiet companionship of the neighborhood, where afternoon fades into evening and familiar voices carry softly through open windows. As the evening deepens, the neighborhood seems to draw a little closer together. You step out onto the porch for a moment, perhaps to shake out a small rug, or simply to breathe in the cooling air. The sky is painted in soft layers now, dusky blue melting into lavender, with the faintest trace of gold at the horizon. Across the street, a neighbor waters their garden in slow, even arcs. The water catches the last light before disappearing into the soil. A child's laughter rises briefly, then fades as they are called inside for supper. You rest your hands on the porch railing. There is comfort in these small, visible signs of life. Even without speaking, you sense the presence of others moving through similar routines, clearing tables, finishing chores, preparing for the evening. Sometimes, neighbors gather in pairs or small groups on front steps. Chairs are pulled close together. Hands rest in laps or cradle enamel mugs filled with tea. The conversations are unhurried. Topics drift gently from one to another. Who found sugar this week? How the tomatoes are coming along? Whether the school will hold another scrap collection drive soon? You might walk down the steps and join them. No invitation is needed. Just a smile and a quiet evening. You settle into an empty chair or lean lightly against the fence. The talk is steady and practical. Someone mentions a new recipe for stretching ground meat with grated vegetables. Another shares news of a relative who has written recently. The details are shared calmly. Nothing sensational, just updates woven into daily life. You listen as much as you speak. There's a rhythm to these exchanges. One person talks while others nod thoughtfully. Then another voice takes its turn. Laughter appears now and then, soft and genuine. If there is worry beneath the surface, it rarely rises sharply. It's acknowledged in small ways, a pause before mentioning a name, a hand briefly resting on another's arm. Support flows quietly here. Perhaps someone needs help repairing a fence. Someone else offers to lend a tool. A jar of preserved fruit might be passed from one porch to another. A bundle of extra seedlings finds a new home in a neighbor's yard. These gestures are modest, but meaningful. You notice how often people say, "Let me know if you need anything," and they mean it. As twilight deepens, porch lights begin to glow one by one. The light is soft, contained, mindful of blackout regulations that will soon require curtains to be drawn tightly. Children are called indoors, their footsteps quick along the pavement. Doors close gently. Screen doors tap in familiar rhythms. You remain outside for a moment longer. A breeze moves through the trees, rustling leaves in a low, steady murmur. Somewhere down the block, a radio plays faintly through an open window, music drifting into the evening air before being turned down. You think about how much of life happens in these in-between spaces, not at the grand level of headlines or official announcements, but here, on porches, along sidewalks, in quiet conversations shared at dusk. Eventually, you step back inside. The kitchen light feels warmer after the dimming sky. You check the stove, stirring a pot gently. The scent of supper lingers, vegetables softening, broth simmering, bread warming in the oven. Through the window, you see silhouettes moving in neighboring homes. Shadows cross curtains. Figures pass by lamplight. It feels like a constellation of small worlds, each glowing softly in the dark. You set the table once more, straightening plates and aligning utensils. The small act feels grounding. Perhaps there's a knock at the door. It might be a neighbor returning a borrowed dish or sharing a small bundle of herbs from their garden. The exchange is simple. Thank you. Of course. See you tomorrow. These interactions stitch the block together like the careful mending you finished earlier. You think about how information travels here. Sometimes it arrives in newspapers or official bulletins. Sometimes it moves more quietly, from one porch to another, from one conversation to the next. A new regulation, a change in rationing, an upcoming community event. The news settles gently into the rhythm of daily life. You don't rush to react. You absorb it thoughtfully, discussing it in low tones, adjusting routines as needed. As the hour grows later, porch conversations wind down. Chairs scrape softly against wooden boards. Good nights are exchanged. Doors close. The street grows quieter. You draw your curtains part way, preparing for the full blackout later. The fabric falls in smooth folds, muting the light inside. The house feels enclosed now in a comforting way. You sit for a moment at the table, listening to the faint sounds beyond your walls. The distant hum of a car, the steady chirp of insects, a final murmur of voices fading into silence. There is a sense of shared resilience here, not loud or dramatic, but deeply rooted. Everyone is adjusting. Everyone is contributing in small ways. Everyone is leaning gently on one another when needed. You rise and clear the last of the supper dishes. Water runs softly into the sink. Plates clink together with muted sounds. You dry each one carefully and place it back in its cupboard. The evening is settling fully now. Soon, the radio will take its place at the center of the room, offering familiar voices and music that weave the neighborhood together in a different way, through shared listening rather than shared conversation. You wipe your hands on a towel and glance toward the small wooden cabinet where the radio rests. Its polished surface reflects the lamplight faintly. Its knobs wait to be turned. You cross the room and rest your hand lightly on the radio cabinet. It stands solid and dependable against the wall, its wooden surface polished by years of careful dusting. The fabric-covered speaker faces outward like a quiet companion, ready to speak when invited. You turn the knob slowly. A soft crackle fills the room first, a gentle hiss of static, like wind moving through distant trees. Then, as you adjust the dial, the signal sharpens. A voice emerges, calm and measured, as if it has been waiting patiently all day. You lower yourself into a nearby chair. The light from the lamp casts a warm circle over the room. Shadows gather in the corners, softened by curtains drawn carefully against the night. Outside, the street is dim now, blackout regulations observed with quiet diligence. Inside, the radio becomes a center of attention. The announcer's voice is steady and clear. There is no rush in the cadence, no need for raised volume. News is delivered in composed tones, each word chosen carefully. You listen with hands folded in your lap, absorbing the information without letting it disturb the calm of the room. The headlines are part of life now. They are acknowledged, considered, and then gently set aside. You do not linger on them. Instead, you let the broadcast move forward, transitioning into other segments, community updates, public service announcements, reminders about rationing schedules or scrap collections. The tone remains practical. After the news, music begins. Perhaps it is a big band melody, soft and smooth, drifting through the speaker in warm waves. The rhythm is lively, but not overwhelming. You tap your fingers lightly against the arm of your chair, feeling the gentle sway of the tune. If others are in the room, they may hum along. A familiar song has a way of smoothing the edges of a long day. It fills the space between words, between thoughts. It carries you, briefly, to dance halls and brighter evenings, even if you remain seated in your own living room. Sometimes there is a radio drama. Actors' voices paint scenes with nothing but tone and timing. A door opens with a subtle creak. Footsteps cross an imagined floor. Dialogue unfolds slowly, inviting you to picture settings in your mind. Quiet streets, cozy parlors, offices with ticking clocks. You close your eyes for a moment and listen. The story doesn't need spectacle. It's enough to follow the rise and fall of voices, the gentle arc of a plot that resolves neatly by the end of the program. In other moments, a variety show might fill the air. A host greets listeners warmly. A comedian delivers light jokes, careful and kind. A singer performs a ballad with clear, steady notes. The atmosphere is communal, as if thousands of living rooms are connected by invisible threads of sound. You imagine families across town doing exactly what you are doing, sitting quietly, listening, perhaps sipping tea or finishing small tasks with the radio as company. The broadcast creates a shared experience without requiring movement. Even advertisements, brief and politely delivered, pass by without fanfare. They are part of the program's rhythm, not interruption, but familiar markers in the flow of sound. You lean back in your chair and let the music wash over you again. The house feels contained and peaceful. The dishes are done. The sewing basket is closed. The garden rests outside under the dark sky. The radio's glow reflects softly on the wall. Occasionally, you adjust the volume, just enough to hear clearly, but never loud enough to disturb the calm. The steady hum becomes almost like a second heartbeat in the room. If you glance toward the window, you see only your own reflection now. The blackout curtains are drawn fully. No stray beam escapes into the night. Outside, the neighborhood is wrapped in careful darkness, each household doing the same. The program nears its end. The announcer thanks listeners in a composed voice. The orchestra plays a final refrain. There is a sense of completion, like the closing of a book. You reach forward and turn the knob once more. The sound fades gradually, replaced again by a faint static that dissolves into silence. The room feels larger without the broadcast, but not empty. You sit for a moment longer. The quiet after the radio has its own texture. It allows thoughts to settle. It gives space for reflection without urgency. You rise slowly and turn down the lamp. Only one light remains now, casting a softer glow. You move through the house with measured steps, checking that doors are secured and curtains properly fastened. The evening is not yet over. There is still supper to share, perhaps letters to read or write, and the careful ritual of preparing for the night ahead. You take a deep breath, noticing how steady your pulse feels, how even your movements have become. The radio has done its work, connecting, informing, soothing. Now, the house returns fully to itself. And as you turn toward the kitchen once more, ready to gather around the table for a simple meal, you feel the gentle shift from listening outward to settling inward. And with the last notes of music lingering softly in the air, you prepare to draw closer to the warmth of supper, where simple food and quiet conversation carry the evening forward. The night has fully arrived now. You stand in the center of the living room for a moment, listening to the stillness. The house feels enclosed in a gentle cocoon of lamplight, but you know that beyond the curtains, the street lies in deliberate darkness. Blackout time has become part of your routine. You move first to the front window. The curtains are already drawn, but you check them carefully. Your fingers smooth the fabric along the edges, ensuring no thin sliver of light peeks through. You adjust the hem where it brushes the sill. You press the material closer together where the panels meet. The gesture is unhurried. It isn't fear that guides you, but habit, care, a quiet understanding that each household contributes by shielding its light. You step back and examine the window from different angles. Satisfied, you move to the next room. In the kitchen, the light is brighter than necessary now. You turn the knob slightly, dimming it to a softer glow. The bulb responds. Instantly, the room settling into a gentler shade. You close the curtain there as well, drawing it firmly across the glass. The night outside feels deeper once the last gaps are covered. The house becomes its own contained world, warm and safe within darkened walls. If there are children in the home, you guide them through this ritual calmly. You explain softly why the curtains must be closed tightly, why porch lights remain off, why even a small crack of brightness matters. They nod, accustomed to the routine, and watch as you secure each window with patient attention. There may be a faint knock from a neighbor at times, just a quiet reminder if a curtain has been left slightly open. It's never harsh, just a gentle tap and a polite word. Everyone looks out for one another. You step outside briefly, perhaps to check that the porch is clear and the door properly latched. The street is almost completely dark now. No glowing windows, no street lamps blazing, just the faint outlines of houses against the sky. The stars appear brighter without the competition of electric light, scattered across the darkness in quiet patterns. You pause for a moment on the porch. The air feels cooler. The sounds are softer. Even footsteps on the pavement seem subdued, as if the whole neighborhood has agreed to move gently. You close the door behind you and turn the lock with a soft click. Inside, the house feels hushed. You move through each room with slow, deliberate steps. A lamp is turned off here, another dimmed there. Soon, only one or two lights remain. casting small pools of warmth. Shadows stretch along the walls, but they do not feel threatening. They feel peaceful, like blankets drawn up to keep the house comfortable. You glance at the clock. Its ticking seems louder now in the quiet, marking each passing second with steady assurance. If there are candles kept nearby for emergencies, you check them briefly, ensuring they are ready if ever needed. You straighten a box of matches and set it neatly back in its place. Preparedness feels calming. You walk to the bedroom and pull back the covers slightly, preparing the bed. The sheets are cool and smooth beneath your hand. You smooth them down and place a folded blanket at the foot, ready in case the night grows colder. Back in the hallway, you check the back door once more. It is secure. You pause and listen. There is no rush of traffic now, no bright glare from passing cars. Even automobiles move carefully at night, headlights dimmed or shielded. The world outside feels distant, almost suspended. You return to the living room and lower the final lamp to its lowest setting. The room glows softly, just enough to see your way without strain. The blackout curtains hang firmly, their fabric absorbing light and keeping it contained. You sink into a chair for a final moment of wakefulness. Perhaps you pick up a book and read a page or two, your eyes moving slowly over the lines. Perhaps you simply sit, hands folded, letting the quiet settle around you like a gentle tide. There is something deeply calming about this shared darkness. It binds the neighborhood together in silent cooperation, each family participating, each window carefully covered, each household aware of the others. You rise once more and switch off the last lamp. The room falls into near darkness, illuminated only by faint starlight filtering through heavy fabric. You move slowly, familiar with the layout of your home even without sight. Your footsteps are soft against the floorboards. In the bedroom, you undress quietly, folding your clothes neatly over the back of a chair. You slip into bed and pull the covers up to your shoulders. The mattress gives slightly beneath you. You lie still and listen. The night is not empty. It carries subtle sounds, the distant rumble of a train far away, the whisper of wind along the eaves, the steady breathing of others in nearby rooms. You take a slow breath. The blackout is complete. The house is secure. The tasks of the day have been finished with care. Tomorrow will bring its own set of routines, errands, work, gardens, letters. But for now, there is only this quiet moment suspended in darkness. You close your eyes, and as the neighborhood rests together under a sky bright with unchallenged stars, your thoughts drift gently toward one final habit of the day. Those careful letters written by lamplight, folded neatly and sent outward with hope. And in the stillness of the darkened house, you remember the quiet comfort of pen and paper and the steady reassurance found in writing and waiting. Next, chapter 13, letters and waiting, stationery, stamps, and hopeful habits. Before sleep fully claims the night, there is sometimes one more quiet ritual. You rise gently from bed, or perhaps you never lay down at all, choosing instead to sit at the small desk tucked against the wall. A single lamp glows softly, shaded so its light remains contained behind firmly drawn curtains. On the desk rests a stack of stationery. The paper is simple, cream-colored, slightly textured beneath your fingertips. An envelope lies beside it, already addressed in careful handwriting, or waiting to be. You sit down and smooth the top sheet flat. The pen feels balanced in your hand. You dip it lightly into ink, or uncap it if it's a fountain pen, and pause for a moment before writing the date in the upper corner. The act of beginning feels important. You start with a greeting, warm, steady, familiar. You describe the ordinary things first: the weather, the garden's progress, the neighbor who shared extra beans, the way the tomatoes are ripening more quickly now that the days are warmer. You write about the small routines of the house, how the curtains are drawn each evening without fail, how the ration book is kept in its drawer, how the radio played a favorite song last night. You include gentle details, the sound of rain on the roof, the way the street looks at dawn. You keep your tone calm. You don't dwell heavily on worry. Instead, you offer reassurance in simple ways. You let the reader picture the steady rhythm of home, the familiar table, the tidy shelves, the garden rows standing in quiet order. If you've received a letter recently, you might refer to it. You mention how glad you were to read their words, how you pictured them as you read, how you folded the paper carefully and placed it back into its envelope to be read again later. Letters are never hurried. You choose your sentences thoughtfully, knowing they may travel far before reaching their destination. You imagine them carried by train, sorted by careful hands, tucked into a mailbag alongside hundreds of others. There is something comforting about that journey. You turn the page and continue writing. You describe school activities, a scrap drive that filled several large bins, a sweater mended at the elbow, a small cake baked carefully with measured sugar. These details might seem modest, but they carry weight. They paint a picture of steadiness, of continuity. You pause occasionally, lifting the pen from the paper. The house is very quiet now. The blackout curtains hold the night at bay. The only sound is the soft scratch of ink against paper and the steady ticking of the clock down the hall. You feel connected in this moment to someone far away, to the larger web of families writing similar letters under similar lamps. When the page is full, you sign your name carefully. You fold the paper along neat lines and slide it into the waiting envelope. The flap is moistened and pressed down firmly. You smooth it with your palm to ensure it seals. On the front, you double-check the address. Every letter must be precise. Street name, city, state, or perhaps a military designation written in block letters, copied carefully from a previous envelope to avoid mistakes. You affix a stamp in the corner. Its small printed design catches the lamplight briefly before you press it flat. The letter is complete now. You place it near the door or in your bag, ready to be mailed in the morning. It will join the steady stream of correspondence that travels back and forth across towns and oceans. Waiting is part of the ritual too. Days may pass before a reply arrives, weeks sometimes, but you grow accustomed to that waiting. It becomes a quiet companion rather than a sharp ache. You learn to find comfort in the act of sending. You rise from the desk and turn off the lamp. Darkness settles once more around you. You move carefully through the familiar hallway, guided by memory and soft starlight filtering faintly through heavy curtains. Back in bed, you lie still. You think briefly of the letter's journey, of the moment it will be opened, of eyes scanning your words and picturing the same kitchen, the same garden, the same quiet porch at dusk. There is reassurance in knowing that your handwriting carries more than ink. It carries home. Your breathing slows. Outside, the neighborhood rests in careful darkness. No bright lights pierce the sky. No sudden noises disturb the calm. The day has been full in gentle ways. Morning errands, steady work, garden tending, neighborly talk, radio music, supper, blackout checks, and now a letter folded with care. Each task small, each one steady. You feel the weight of the covers around you, warm and secure. The clock continues its measured ticking, marking time in soft increments. And as your thoughts drift further into stillness, you sense the night settling fully over the town. A shared pause before another ordinary, purposeful day begins. And in the quiet embrace of darkness, with letters sent and curtains drawn, the home front rests gently, ready to greet the slow light of morning once again. The kitchen welcomes you again with its familiar warmth. A soft glow from the overhead light rests on the table, catching the edges of plates and glasses. The air carries the comforting scent of whatever has been simmering patiently on the stove. Vegetables softened in broth, perhaps, or a modest casserole assembled from what the pantry and garden could offer. You lift the lid of a pot and let a small cloud of steam rise. It curls gently upward before fading into the room. You stir once, slowly, tasting with care. A pinch of salt, measured thoughtfully. A small shake of pepper, nothing extravagant, just enough to round out the flavor. You set the table with quiet attention. Plates are placed evenly. Utensils aligned with small adjustments of your fingertips. Napkins folded simply, perhaps reused from earlier in the week. Laundered and pressed with care. There is satisfaction in the neatness. If others are in the house, they gather gradually. Chairs slide softly against the floor. Someone pours water into glasses. Another passes a basket of bread, sliced thinly to make it last, but arranged neatly so it still feels generous. You sit down together. There is no grand announcement, no formal beginning, just the shared understanding that this is the time to pause and eat. You ladle stew or spoon vegetables onto plates in moderate portions. The ingredients may be humble: potatoes, carrots, beans, perhaps a small amount of meat stretched thoughtfully among them. But the aroma is rich, born from slow cooking and patient seasoning. You take the first bite slowly. The warmth spreads through you. It feels grounding after a day of errands, work, tending and mending. Across the table, others do the same, their shoulders relaxing as they eat. Conversation flows gently. Someone describes a small success at school, a well-written spelling test, a new friend made on the playground. Someone else recounts a moment at work, how a machine needed adjustment, or how a customer found exactly what they were looking for. The stories are simple, familiar, comforting in their ordinariness. You listen attentively, you nod, you ask quiet questions. You pass a bowl when asked. The rhythm of eating and speaking balances naturally, no one voice overpowering another. If there are concerns, they are discussed calmly. Perhaps there is mention of a change in rationing points, or a reminder that shoes must last another season. The tone remains steady. Solutions are considered thoughtfully, patching soles, trading recipes, saving coupons for later. No one raises their voice. Instead, there is a shared sense of adaptability, a recognition that these adjustments are part of the fabric of daily life now. Between bites, you notice small details. The way lamplight reflects in a glass of water, the faint clink of a spoon against a bowl, the the soft scrape of chair legs as someone shifts slightly. Outside, the night deepens. Blackout curtains hang firmly, in place. No light escapes into the street. The neighborhood rests in careful darkness, each home lit softly within its own walls. You reach for a slice of bread and tear it gently in half. There is something reassuring about this modest abundance. It may not be lavish, but it is sufficient. The table is not empty. The plates are warm. The company is steady. When the meal nears its end, you gather plates gradually. Someone offers to help. Dishes are stacked carefully, carried to the sink without clatter. The sound of running water fills the kitchen again, gentle and rhythmic. You wash while another dries. The teamwork feels natural. Plates are wiped and returned to cupboards. Utensils are sorted into drawers. The table is cleared and wiped down with slow circular motions. Soon, the kitchen looks orderly once more. Perhaps there is a small dessert, sliced fruit from the garden, or a simple pudding made with careful portions of sugar. It is served modestly, enjoyed without haste. Afterward, chairs are pushed back into place. The house grows quieter again, but it is a full quiet, a satisfied quiet. You step briefly into the hallway and check that the front door is secured. You glance once more at the curtains, ensuring they are snug against the windows. In the living room, a lamp glows softly. You settle into a chair or onto a sofa. Perhaps someone reads aloud from a book. Perhaps you simply sit together, enjoying the gentle hum of shared presence. The day has unfolded in layers, from early morning stillness to errands, work, gardens, mending, neighbors, radio, and now supper. Each layer has been steady, manageable, human. As the evening stretches further, you begin to prepare for the final rituals of the night. Curtains will be checked once more. Lights lowered. The house will be guided into darkness with care, honoring blackout rules that have become second nature. You take a slow breath, feeling the calm that follows a well-tended day. And as you rise to dim another lamp and move softly from room to room, you sense the gentle shift toward a quieter chapter, one defined by shadows, hushed footsteps, and the shared responsibility of keeping the night peaceful. And with the supper dishes dried and the table cleared, you turn your attention to the careful practice of evening blackouts, where even light itself is handled with steady hands. Before sleep fully claims the night, there is sometimes one more quiet ritual. You rise gently from bed, or perhaps you never lay down at all, choosing instead to sit at the small desk, tucked against the wall. A single lamp glows softly, shaded so its light remains contained behind firmly drawn curtains. On the desk rests a stack of stationery. The paper is simple, cream-colored, slightly textured beneath your fingertips. An envelope lies beside it, already addressed in careful handwriting, or waiting to be. You sit down and smooth the top sheet flat. The pen feels balanced in your hand. You dip it lightly into ink, or uncap it if it's a fountain pen, and pause for a moment before writing the date in the upper corner. The act of beginning feels important. You start with a greeting, warm, steady, familiar. You describe the ordinary things first. The weather, the garden's progress, the neighbor who shared extra beans, the way the tomatoes are ripening more quickly now that the days are warmer. You write about the small routines of the house, how the curtains are drawn each evening without fail, how the ration book is kept in its drawer, how the radio played a favorite song last night. You include gentle details, the sound of rain on the roof, the way the street looks at dawn. You keep your tone calm. You don't dwell heavily on worry. Instead, you offer reassurance in simple ways. You let the reader picture the steady rhythm of home, the familiar table, the tidy shelves, the garden rows standing in quiet order. If you've received a letter recently, you might refer to it. You mention how glad you were to read their words, how you pictured them as you read, how you folded the paper carefully and placed it back into its envelope to be read again later. Letters are never hurried. You choose your sentences thoughtfully, knowing they may travel far before reaching their destination. You imagine them carried by train, sorted by careful hands, tucked into a mailbag alongside hundreds of others. There is something comforting about that journey. You turn the page and continue writing. You describe school activities, a scrap drive that filled several large bins, a sweater mended at the elbow, a small cake baked carefully with measured sugar. These details might seem modest, but they carry weight. They paint a picture of steadiness, of continuity. You pause occasionally, lifting the pen from the paper. The house is very quiet now. The blackout curtains hold the night at bay. The only sound is the soft scratch of ink against paper and the steady ticking of the clock down the hall. You feel connected in this moment to someone far away, to the larger web of families writing similar letters under similar lamps. When the page is full, you sign your name carefully. You fold the paper along neat lines and slide it into the waiting envelope. The flap is moistened and pressed down firmly. You smooth it with your palm to ensure it seals. On the front, you double-check the address. Every letter must be precise. Street name, city, state, or perhaps a military designation written in block letters, copied carefully from a previous envelope to avoid mistakes. You affix a stamp in the corner. Its small printed design catches the lamplight briefly before you press it flat. The letter is complete now. Place it near the door or in your bag, ready to be mailed in the morning. It will join the steady stream of correspondence that travels back and forth across towns and oceans. Waiting is part of the ritual too. Days may pass before a reply arrives. Weeks sometimes. But you grow accustomed to that waiting. It becomes a quiet companion rather than a sharp ache. You learn to find comfort in the act of sending. You rise from the desk and turn off the lamp. Darkness settles once more around you. You move carefully through the familiar hallway, guided by memory and soft starlight filtering faintly through heavy curtains. Back in bed, you lie still. You think briefly of the letter's journey, of the moment it will be opened, of eyes scanning your words and picturing the same kitchen, the same garden, the same quiet porch at dusk. There is reassurance in knowing that your handwriting carries more than ink. It carries home. Your breathing slows. Outside, the neighborhood rests in careful darkness. No bright lights pierce the sky. No sudden noises disturb the calm. The day has been full in gentle ways. Morning errands, steady work, garden tending, neighborly talk, radio music, supper, blackout checks, and now a letter folded with care. Each task small, each one steady. You feel the weight of the covers around you, warm and secure. The clock continues its measured ticking, marking time in soft increments. And as your thoughts drift further into stillness, you sense the night settling fully over the town. A shared pause before another ordinary, purposeful day begins. And in the quiet embrace of darkness, with letters sent and curtains drawn, the home front rests gently, ready to greet the slow light of morning once again. Next, chapter 14. Night settles in. Calm routines, prayerful quiet, and sleep. The house has grown completely still now. You lie beneath the covers, aware of the gentle weight of blankets tucked around your shoulders. The sheets are cool where your hands rest, warmed gradually by your own steady presence. In the darkness, the familiar shapes of the room exist only in memory. The dresser against the wall, the chair in the corner, the folded clothes resting neatly where you left them. Outside, the blackout holds. No stray beams of light escape into the street. The neighborhood shares the same careful darkness, each home wrapped in quiet cooperation. Without street lamps or glowing windows, the sky feels larger. If you could see it clearly, you might notice the stars shining more brightly than usual. Undimmed and patient, you turn onto your side and listen. The clock ticks softly down the hall. The sound is steady, reassuring. Somewhere in the distance, a train moves along its track, the low rumble barely reaching you before fading into silence again. The air in the room is calm. You notice your breathing, slow even. The rise and fall of your chest mirrors the steady rhythm that has carried you through the day. Morning's first light, the careful measuring in the kitchen, the patient waiting in line, the steady work of office or factory, the quiet tending of garden rows, the gentle stitch of needle and thread, the low hum of radio voices, the shared warmth of supper, the careful drawing of curtains, the smooth folding of a letter. Each moment has been part of a larger pattern. There were no dramatic crescendos, no sudden turns, just a continuous thread of ordinary effort woven carefully from dawn to dusk. You let your mind drift back through those scenes, not in detail, but in feeling. The warmth of a cup held between your hands, the texture of soil pressing cool against your fingertips, the soft murmur of neighbors' voices at twilight, the faint crackle of the radio as music filled the room. These are the anchors of the home front. They are not loud or grand. They are steady, repeating, reliable. If you keep a small bedside table, perhaps there rests a well-worn book or a folded handkerchief. Maybe there is a framed photograph, edges slightly worn, the image faintly visible even in dim light. You do not need to reach for it. Just knowing it is there brings quiet comfort. In some homes, there may be a brief moment of prayer before sleep. Nothing elaborate, just a few whispered words spoken into the dark. Gratitude for safety, hope for tomorrow. A gentle wish for those far away. You feel the calm that follows such reflection. The house seems to breathe around you. Wood settles softly in the cooling air. A faint breeze brushes against the outside of the window, unheard but sensed. The night is not empty. It is full of small, almost invisible movements. You shift slightly under the blanket and let your muscles relax. There is comfort in knowing that tomorrow will begin much the same way. The routines will return. The kettle will hum. The ration book will wait in its drawer. The garden will need watering. The sewing basket may open again. Ordinary tasks will rise to meet you. And in those tasks, there will be steadiness. The world beyond your street may remain uncertain, but within these walls, you have built something reliable, a pattern of care and cooperation, of thrift and quiet resilience. Your thoughts grow softer now. The ticking clock becomes more distant, as if wrapped in cotton. The faint hum of the outside world fades into a gentle hush. You take one more slow breath. The darkness feels safe, intentional, shared. The blackout is not an absence, but a collective act, a quiet agreement to protect and to endure. You allow your eyes to remain closed. Sleep approaches not as a sudden drop, but as a gradual easing. Your mind loosens its grip on the day's details. Images blur into gentle shapes. Sounds soften into distant echoes. The home front rests. In countless houses across the country, others lie beneath blankets in similar stillness. The same darkness surrounds them. The same quiet routines have guided their days. Together, without fanfare, without noise, you share this simple ending. The night deepens, and in the calm, steady hush of a carefully darkened home, you drift fully into sleep, ready when morning light returns to begin again with the same patient, purposeful rhythm. The house has grown completely still now. You lie beneath the covers, aware of the gentle weight of blankets tucked around your shoulders. The sheets are cool where your hands rest, warmed gradually by your own steady presence. In the darkness, the familiar shapes of the room exist only in memory. The dresser against the wall, the chair in the corner, the folded clothes resting neatly where you left them. Outside, the blackout holds. No stray beams of light escape into the street. The neighborhood shares the same careful darkness, each home wrapped in quiet cooperation. Without street lamps or glowing windows, the sky feels larger. If you could see it clearly, you might notice the stars shining more brightly than usual, undimmed and patient. You turn onto your side and listen. The clock ticks softly down the hall. The sound is steady, reassuring. Somewhere in the distance, a train moves along its track, the low rumble barely reaching you before fading into silence again. The air in the room is calm. You notice your breathing, slow even. The rise and fall of your chest mirrors the steady rhythm that has carried you through the day. Morning's first light, the careful measuring in the kitchen, the patient waiting in line, the steady work of office or factory, the quiet tending of garden rows, the gentle stitch of needle and thread, the low hum of radio voices, the shared warmth of supper, the careful drawing of curtains, the smooth folding of a letter. Each moment has been part of a larger pattern. There were no dramatic crescendos, no sudden turns, just a continuous thread of ordinary effort woven carefully from dawn to dusk. You let your mind drift back through those scenes, not in detail, but in feeling. The warmth of a cup held between your hands, the texture of soil pressing cool against your fingertips, the soft murmur of neighbors' voices at twilight, the faint crackle of the radio as music filled the room. These are the anchors of the home front. They are not loud or grand. They are steady, repeating, reliable. If you keep a small bedside table, perhaps there rests a well-worn book or a folded handkerchief. Maybe there is a framed photograph, edges slightly worn, the image faintly visible even in dim light. You do not need to reach for it. Just knowing it is there brings quiet comfort. In some homes, there may be a brief moment of prayer before sleep, nothing elaborate. Just a few whispered words spoken into the dark. Gratitude for safety, hope for tomorrow, a gentle wish for those far away. You feel the calm that follows such reflection. The house seems to breathe around you. Wood settles softly in the cooling air. A faint breeze brushes against the outside of the window, unheard but sensed. The night is not empty. It is full of small, almost invisible movements. You shift slightly under the blanket and let your muscles relax. There is comfort in knowing that tomorrow will begin much the same way. The routines will return. The kettle will hum. The ration book will wait in its drawer. The garden will need watering. The sewing basket may open again. Ordinary tasks will rise to meet you. And in those tasks, there will be steadiness. The world beyond your street may remain uncertain, but within these walls, you have built something reliable. A pattern of care and cooperation, of thrift and quiet resilience. Your thoughts grow softer now. The ticking clock becomes more distant, as if wrapped in cotton. The faint hum of the outside world fades into a gentle hush. You take one more slow breath. The darkness feels safe, intentional, shared. The blackout is not an absence, but a collective act, a quiet agreement to protect and to endure. You allow your eyes to remain closed. Sleep approaches not as a sudden drop, but as a gradual easing. Your mind loosens its grip on the day's details. Images blur into gentle shapes. Sounds soften into distant echoes. The home front rests. Countless houses across the country. Others lie beneath blankets in similar stillness. The same darkness surrounds them. The same quiet routines have guided their days. Together, without fanfare, without noise, you share this simple ending. The night deepens, and in the calm, steady hush of a carefully darkened home, you drift fully into sleep, ready when morning light returns to begin